Welcome back to what I'm hoping is going to be a really innovative session, interesting session from four really interesting organisations and individuals who I'm going to introduce in a second, all about reverse logistics and returns and how the returns proposition of a business can really be a key differentiator and a USP. In no particular order, I'll just introduce the panel. We have Richard Locke, who is Head of Merchandising and Operations for Ocado. He's been doing that now for a number of years, responsible for web trading, merchandise planning, analytics and general merchandise. And he's also looking at the up-and-coming beauty retailer in partnership with Marie Claire. Been with Ocado for 4.5 years and joined as a business development analyst. Prior to that was a consultant with Oliver Wyman. We've got Matt Curry as Head of E-commerce for Lovehoney. So we'll be exploring a little bit more about Lovehoney and some of the interesting returns that he gets, I'm sure, over the course of the next 45 minutes. Don't feel free to embarrass him. He deals with that very well. I'm sure he's used to that. Levi Young is co-founder of Enclothed, which is an online personal shopping service for men, combining personal stylists with expert knowledge and data. She formed the business with Dana Zinger and came out very famously from the Dragon's Den experience. And it'd be nice to hear a few stories, Levi, about that.
I can tell you my war story.
Daughter of pop icon Paul Young from the 80s, and he's also very keen at competing in horse events. And then finally, last but not least, Anthony Gavin is actively involved in the retail sector for the past 7 years as Narvar's Regional Director of EMEA. Is able to draw on over 100 customer experiences, delivering return solutions for some leading retailers like John Lewis, M. Brown and Boohoo. So what I'll do, guys, just to start us off, is if we can maybe go from the end there, and just introduce yourself, a little bit about your organisation and what your current reverse logistics and returns policy is, please.
Okay, I'm Richard. So Ocado's got two main businesses. The grocery stuff's about 90% of the sales, and then on the other side, about 10% of the sales is made up of general merchandise stuff. We have a pet website, Fetch, a beauty website, Fabled, and a kitchen website, Sizzle, and that's my area, the general merchandise stuff. So in terms of the reverse logistics piece, when we launched, we were always delivering through the Ocado network, and we were actually able to offer an absolutely fantastic returns service. We'd get the Ocado driver to come and pick it up from you and take it back, and it was a hand-delivered service, so great for the customer and great for us. It always stayed within our domain all the way back into the warehouse. As we've expanded and now do courier deliveries as well, we've now sort of lost the ability to control everything 100%. And that's what we're struggling with at the moment. From being used to having everything perfect and everything controlled, having to actually do things differently and work with other people has been the tricky bit. And then one of the other bits that's our biggest trouble at the moment is on the beauty side of things. We're now selling some incredibly expensive creams, and La Mer's probably the brand that's the most expensive out there. And the number of people that buy La Mer and then return it for a refund, and when you get it back, you find out that it's all sealed in its plastic sheath and everything, but it's actually just E45 cream or VO5 shampoo, hair gel, is astonishing. And so at that point, the tricky bit is actually you've got a lot of legitimate customers that you want to keep happy, and actually you don't want to keep them waiting for a refund for many, many days. And on the other side, like, you don't want to give back someone 150 quid if they're sending you VO5 hair gel instead of really expensive material. So the bits we're sort of wrestling with two things there. On the one side, it's the controlling the logistics versus not controlling it. And on the other side, it's giving the customers a great experience and trusting them. And on the other side, it's not having our pants pulled down and being taken for fools. So we haven't really figured out where to settle yet, but we've got some interesting challenges.
Thanks, Richard. That's great. Thank you. Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm Matt from Lovehoney. If you don't know what Lovehoney do, you're in for a surprise. We are a leading retailer of sex toys. Our returns policy is somewhat interesting. If you have registered with us and you sign up for an account and mailing list and that sort of thing, our returns policy is that you can return anything for any reason up to a year after you've bought it, even if you've used it. We just want you to be happy. And if you think that people don't return used sex toys, you are wrong, because they do. There is, in fact, an entire Channel 4 program called More Sex, Please We're British about our returns department, if you want to hunt that one out. Our kind of challenge is how do you, whenever someone returns something that is essentially a failure on our behalf, our number one returns reason is the product was too big. People's eyes are bigger than their other parts. And so how do we help people make an informed purchase? Because when someone buys from us, that's probably their first purchase into the category. And if they do not have a 100% brilliant experience the first time round, they are unlikely to buy a second time in the category, let alone from us, within the entire category. This is such an emotive and anxiety-ridden subject for them. So how do we give enough information to our customers to make an informed decision while still keeping it fun and light and sexy and so on and so forth? That's hard for us.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Levi?
Yeah, so I'm Levi, I'm the co-founder of Enclothed, and we're an online personal shopping service for men. So ideally the way it works is men sign up, they give us their sizes, styles and preferences. We have stylists that then look at that data and understand what you're going to like, what you're going to wear and what will fit you, and we deliver it to their home. And they can try everything on in the comfort of their own house, and what they want they keep and what they don't they send back to us. So ultimately we have a try before you buy type service where we're delivering anything from kind of 5 to 15 products into a consumer's house, and you can try it all on. And for us, I suppose the challenges are similar, which is one, we work with third-party couriers, so that customer service, controlling the customer service when working with third parties is important. Two, getting the right product into the homes so that we get as little return as possible. But the way that our business model really uses returns is to empower our technology and our stylists to make better decisions in the future. So we are really fanatical about taking as much data on a return as possible. We want to know the sentiment of why someone returns something. So was it fit? We know that like 30% of our products are returned to fit because of fit. And we then take those products out of the category so they can't buy them again, and we don't send it to them again. And that way, each box that we send out gets a better and better and better rate, and less returns. So yeah.
Thanks, Levi. Anthony?
Yeah, so I work for a company called Narvar, and the main vision of the business is that there's this existing vacuum in the customer experience from the moment they buy something to actually when they take delivery of that item, or indeed return or exchange that item. It's something that's quite literally thrown over the fence to the carrier networks for them to deal with. And actually what customers want and how we can build this loyalty and this repeat purchase frequency and recency and customer lifetime value that Matt talked about is by actually owning that true end-to-end experience, including the post-purchase experience. And returns and exchanges and repairs is a key part of that. So we work with over 500 brands in the US, and we're growing very, very quickly here to really help retailers to meet the needs of their customers, because this problem's not going away. Like the bracketing, as they call it in the US, where people buy 5 pairs of shoes and return 4 of them and keep 1. It's not a problem we can fight. We just have to create a more engaging and personalized and compelling experience for customers so that they buy with us versus buying with our competitors.
That's great, thank you. So the format of this session really is we've got some pre-prescribed questions here. But obviously we want as much audience participation as we can possibly get, given we've got such a wide variation of companies here and individuals who are subject matter experts. So I'm going to throw it open first of all, see if we've got any questions from the audience to see whether anybody's got a question about any aspect of any of these businesses, and hopefully talk about reverse logistics and returns. And if we don't get a question, then I will choose one. Any questions at all at the moment? Okay, well I'll start off then. What general question? Maybe Levi start off with. Sorry. What do you think are the most effective returns policies for retailers in 2018? If you, as a consumer and also as a business leader, what would you say was one of probably the most effective returns policies?
I think from a consumer standpoint, we want free returns. We're giving the consumers a lot of bargaining power with us as retailers. We want next day shipments, we want free returns, and we want them really hassle-free. For businesses, that's a bit of a challenge because one, it's cost. It's costly to have all these returns and to do them in such a timely fashion. Couriers premiums go up, and also we don't want to encourage consumers to return product. I think for us at Enclothed, the way we use our returns to empower future decisions for the consumer helps us understand the power of a return. So because we're collecting more and more data on an individual's preferences and affiliations to each product, but we can then combine that data and see, well, if you bought this and you're this kind of size and these other people also bought this but returned it, we know it's not going to fit you.
Sure.
And we're telling a consumer up front, no, you can't have that shirt because ultimately we know it's not going to fit. Take this instead. And we will send out our boxes with alternate sizing in. So you'll have, we will know that someone will be a large in a brand when ultimately they're a medium in 10 others. And we'll put that in and we don't ship them out necessarily the size they say they are.
Okay. Okay.
So.
Yeah, can I ask you the same question, Max? I'm intrigued by the returns policy of Lovehoney.
Well, that's the thing.
I think that was quite a shock to a lot of people here.
So it's purely based on data. So, if someone's going to return a sex toy, it's either because they tried it, they didn't get on with it, or it broke. So in terms of kind of speed of return, that's going to happen within 2 weeks at best. So you think, a year-long returns policy might, hamstring you as a business, but it doesn't, because ultimately, 95% of our returns will happen within that window. Our returns policy could be 2 years, for all it mattered. And as long as we have some monitoring systems in place so that people aren't using us as a sex toys lending library, it's kind of fine, And so originally we had that returns policy was for everyone, absolutely everyone. And then we realized essentially that none of our competitors were copying this. Essentially, either they used kind of external kind of returns processing or something, but they couldn't recreate what we were doing. So we thought, okay, well, let's capitalize on this USP because our customers aren't expecting it. So now, in order to get this returns policy, you have to sign up for an account. So you have to register with us at the end, which means we know more about you, which means we can customize the product recommendations, all sorts of things. The other side of it is obviously, in terms of data, getting the returns data. So if customers are saying, well, actually, this is bigger than you think it is, or anything like that, you can use that to essentially inform the customers. And the more you inform the customers, the less they're going to buy 5 different things. They're just going to buy the one that actually matters to them.
Anthony, you and your organisation work with many, many retailers across the globe. And I think you'd have an interesting perspective on what you believe a world-class returns policy would be. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think from my side, it's whatever the customer wants. It's bringing convenience. It's bringing, free returns is becoming table stakes even now, right? So it's, how do we work with the Collect Pluses, the parcel shops, the InPost, the Asda to you, whatever. It might be convenient for some people to go to the post office and print off a label and pay the packaging and weigh it and all of that stuff. But all of the effort is still on the customer. So let's take on board some of that as a retailer, take some responsibility for it, and give the customers whatever options they want that's convenient for that day, whether it's dropping off at a Doddle or or another Pudo point. Whatever the customer wants is the answer to what is a good returns policy, because that's I think part of the challenge is the way we measure performance and the way we measure profitability. It's kind of logistics sits over here, e-commerce sits over here. We've run a great campaign on personalization or recommendations. We've sold tons of stuff, and none of that returns data ever flows back in because it's a piece of paper where somebody's ticked the first thing on the list in terms of reason codes. It never makes its way back to the merchandising team to say, let's put a note on the PDP to say this comes up a size small or a size big or something like that. So it's connecting. It's kind of connecting all those silos together to create the best experience for the customer.
Richard, obviously Ocado, food retailing business online. Are returns a huge issue for you?
So I guess outside of the grocery world, in my world, the biggest cause of customers requesting concerns is on our pet website Fetch, where it's dog food or cat food where something's arrived split or something like that. And actually for there, the thing that we really want to get to is like, if it's a 15 kilogram bag of dog food, that can be free for the customer to send back to us, but why the hell would we want to take back in 15 kilograms of kibble that's loose? And so that's the big thing for us there is like, we'll normally tend to just refund the customer and tell them to keep it and sort of do what they want with it, donate it, use it, whatever, provided that we don't know that they're just using us as sort of like a free food library, and we're keeping track of like the refund rate and their spend rate and whether or not we think they're actually someone we want to keep. So it's all about a sort of like, how much do you trust versus value the customer against the cost of it coming back? Because everyone talks about free returns, and it's obviously free from the customer's perspective, and it's the other side of it. It's actually like pretty expensive, particularly when you go into actually what happens once it gets back into your site. Like, you've got the delivery side of it with Collect Plus or DPD pickup or anything like that, but then you've also got the sort of like the refurbishment of the boxes, if it's electrical, the PAT testing, the making everything fit for resale again. It's actually quite an expensive threshold in terms of like, is it even worth us taking this back? And then you've also got to lay on top of that to, I think, the person's like just trying it on. Yeah. And sometimes you want to actually go over a hurdle even when doesn't make sense economically to take it back, just so that they know that they can't get away with things. And sometimes if they're a great customer, you'd be like, it's just easier to just let them keep that, and that's one for free, and we chalk that up as a win for them and a reputation enhancer. Okay. So
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone from the audience at the moment? Any questions? Sorry, one here. Okay. Well, there's a microphone coming. Yeah.
Thanks. Just a quick one on the last point. Really interested to know what the sort of proportionality is of the cost of return versus the cost of rework. So if it costs, I don't know, £5, whatever, to return a parcel as the cost of a return, what's the sort of all-up cost of return? Have you any feel for that?
Yeah, it's about an extra £1.
So about sort of 5 to 1.
Yep.
So okay, so the rework cost is only £1, and the haulage charge might be £5.
Yeah, on average, but I guess there's a lot where there's a rework of nothing, and there's a lot where the rework's a lot more. But I guess on average it would work out about £1.
Great, thanks.
But I guess just on that point, here's the challenge for the industry, I think, is we need to stop thinking about purely the operational cost of returns. What we never factor into these conversations is the emotional connection to that customer. And that customer, I mean, I've got examples of my 2-year-old daughter not getting a bouncy castle on her birthday party, and how that was an emotional journey for me, and trying to actually get the delivery and then returning it and all of that stuff. If the emotional connection with that customer, if you're saying we might be saving £1 if we don't do this, or we might be saving £5 if we don't do this, you've lost me as a customer forever because you've not let me return something. So that whole loyalty and retention piece from an e-commerce and marketing side is completely missed out of a lot of these logistics conversations. It's all about cost of processing, cost of packaging, cost of return, and all of that. So I think we need to build into that consideration somehow, and analytics is getting better with lifetime value and repeat purchase frequency and all that stuff. What's the impact on customer loyalty by not offering a returns policy that meets their needs? Because quite often they'll talk with their feet.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a question. Okay, it's one there, and then we'll take
Just
this one here. Yeah.
Just one for Anthony. How do you deal with the loss in capital of not actually being able to get the product back on the shelves as you might in another retail business?
Say again. So cope with it.
Can we just have that question again? Sorry.
After a customer returns an item to Lovehoney,
how
do you deal with the loss there of not actually being able to get it back on the shelves compared with the other retailers?
It's worked into our budgets. So all our kind of revenue targets have an extra kind of flat rate set on them to process returns. You're right. Obviously, we don't stick things back on shelves, which tends to be the next question people ask after they ask, "Oh my God, you return sex toys?" For us, we actually have a recycling cost. So anything with electronics in it, which most of our stuff does, has to go for re-recycling. So we have a partnership with a electronics recycling facility in Kent, where everything gets bundled off and sent off to be turned into toasters and that sort of thing. But in terms of revenue impact, it's worked into our budgets from the start. So we know our returns rate. We know our returns rate by pretty much by category. So we can work into how much extra do we have to sell to recoup that cost.
Okay, thank you. We had a question down the front here. Is there room?
I'm working for a client at the moment, and they are looking at both warranty repairs as well as customer returns, because they are both after-sales issues. So the total cost to them is about 5.9% of sales. How do you join up warranty repairs and customer returns in your businesses? It's probably more for Anthony, this one.
Yeah, I guess, well, if we look at somebody, like an Orvis, for example, or a Patagonia, and they're quite known of having a deep connection with their customers when we're talking about loyalty and customer centricity and all of these things. And where we've gone on the repairs side is, as well as offering effectively that whole branded experience to go through a return or an exchange or repair, they can also track exactly where that is in the process. So your fishing rod is being fixed by Anthony in Ohio or whatever, is having a final quality check. It's now being sent out with Hermes or DPD. You can track your return here. So that whole post-purchase experience is the piece that we believe you need to kind of fill, not just on the cost of return, but actually giving customers the visibility there. We had a catch up about returns and things like that. I haven't got the retail side experience, so I can't talk about the cost impact of that, but I'm sure these guys can. Or No. Don't repair anything.
We occasionally have to repair items, but we do it on a case-by-case basis.
It strikes me that the quality of data around returns is a little bit mixed in the sector. And are there any advice you can give to anybody around kind of technology that's available and out there that allows you to track returns?
Oh, well, I mean, most of our stuff, Lovehoney, we tend to build everything in-house ourselves because we're essentially nerds. So essentially, when you process a return, so anyone in any country in Lovehoney can process a return from any other country. It's just the way that our systems are built. So someone in Brisbane can process a return that was returned in the Netherlands or wherever. For us, everything tends to be done almost at batch level. So we know, right, are we getting a bunch of returns because this product is dud and it's this particular batch from this factory in Shenzhen? Which means that data then can go straight to the buying department and the MPD department so that we can just pull that batch from the shelves, because otherwise we're just going to incur more cost in the returns for it. So getting as much granularity in the data as possible. I mean, even, what sort of issue was it? Does that go to your content team? Does that go to your buying team? Does it go to the trading team? How are you essentially disseminating this information out to the business? Because if it's only being held within customer service, it's just, you're not learning anything. You just got to do the same thing over and over again.
And is that typical in terms of organisations? Do they design their own software, build their own software, or is there off-shelf solutions? Levi,
I think it depends. I think for us, I mean, we've designed our own solution as well, and that's because we did experiment with a number of kind of off-the-shelf solutions, and to be honest, nothing really fit what we wanted to do, and that's because we knew from the beginning that we were building a business around a returns model. And it wasn't, we can't even realistically batch things. We are looking at the individual and why that specific customer is returning that specific product to help us, upsell them in the future. So that's to increase our sales, and that's where we take the cost of returns and make it back, and also to lower any more returns in the future. And it was something that was, to be honest, really tricky for us to find a solution that allowed us to, one, treat our inventory at scale, but also then let us look at it on an individual basis and where each product is going to which consumer and actually who that consumer is, and then take that data back out and then put it into larger, so we can look at then collectives of customers and say, well, if you are this type of customer, you are unlikely to buy this type of product. So us, it's really a two-pronged approach. There's the before sale, so we are already looking at what customers shouldn't receive because we know they're going to return it. And then we're also looking at what they are returning to make sure that in the future we're giving them better preferences, better product. So if I go on to an online store at the moment, I can look at a shirt, in thousands of shirts and say, oh, I really love that shirt, and I can buy it, and they'll send it to my house, and I try it on, and it doesn't fit. And I can return it, and it's quite easy for me as a consumer. The problem is in 6 weeks, I go back onto the same retailer, I look at the same shirt in a different colour, and I completely forget that I bought a shirt 6 weeks ago. I purchased the same shirt in a different colour because I like the look of it. I get it, it doesn't fit, I return it.
But you're not prompted online to say that you return that. And
Yeah,
it didn't fit that.
and so for us, what we're saying to the consumer is actually, no. You can't have that shirt, and if you do want it, you need it in a size up or a size down.
Cool.
So yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience at the moment? So over there, thank you. Well done, guys. Getting well.
Afternoon. From what we've been saying so far, a lot of the context has been around the customer choice in terms of what you can offer them in a proposition or what you learn about them by the retail or the return experience. So I'm wondering, what do you do in terms of directly asking the customer feedback about your returns service and your processes? So you built your operation around a returns model. Do you get feedback from the customer about saying, well, I had to return 3 things and the way I have to do it is burdensome for me, and taking that consistently and creating a journey of improvement in the processes?
Yeah, no, 100% is something that we are constantly doing with our customers. So for us, and I think you were touching on it, it's about giving the customer options. So we will run returns through a number of different couriers. We have a premium home collection where we can get a courier to your door at a specific time. And for that, actually, we charge. And then we also have drop-offs and normal couriers that will collect it, and we offer that for free. And yeah, we have a lot of customers. So when we first launched drop in store, so the Collect Plus or the DPD store model, where customers would take the box and drop it in, and the couriers would bring it back to us, we had about 30% of our consumers using that route of returns. We then started printing off a shipping label and putting it in a box, and we got 60% of our customers using it, and it's a lot cheaper for us as a business. And that was literally by speaking to them and customers saying, I don't have a printer at home. Yeah. So yeah, you have to make it really easy. If there is any barriers to people returning something, then they're going to leave it till the very last minute. You're going to get customer service complaints, and it's that building block effect. So you might have a customer that had a slightly late return, and that gave them a negative experience. And then if they don't have a label in their box, or then the courier doesn't turn up, you get those building blocks of negative attributes towards your business. And it's something silly that then comes up to customer service, but actually it's because they've had 5 different touch points where you failed. And that's where you can also have a third-party courier really let you down. And that's really hard, as we are a customer service business, and that's really tough to manage.
I think a good example in that, I didn't know Enclothed until today, just as a just a caveat to that. But you go on their FAQ section, go to delivery and returns, and it says, "Hey, I'm sold," and it says deliveries are free and returns are on us as long as you drop them off, and that's it. You go to Amazon's return policy. It looks like everybody else's returns policy, which is a web page built in the 1980s with about 3,000 FAQs about refunds, exchanges, when you can, when you can't, how you do a repair, how you initiate a return, how, where the small print is. And Amazon Prime fine. Anything else in Amazon, for me, it's been an absolute nightmare. So anybody who thinks that they are the they are the kind of lighthouse customer of a good returns policy, it's not right. I mean, there's a direct impact on me as an individual that I won't buy as much through Amazon that isn't Prime due to their returns policies. So there's a huge opportunity there.
We got anybody from Amazon in the room?
Please.
Might want to respond to that? No? Okay, fair enough.
What I would add to that, speaking about methods of return, don't obviously just have the same returns process in every single country you operate in. So, for example, in Australia, as she was saying to Anthony earlier, in Australia, most post offices do have printers in them. So you don't need to put returns labels in. You can tailor it for the particular country. What we try to do, so obviously we only have offices in 3 different countries, Atlanta, Bath and Brisbane, but we operate in so many other countries. So then we try to have local returns processing at the very least. So in Canada, you can send it to Toronto. In the Netherlands, obviously, send it to Amsterdam. And then they all get bundled up and then sent to us for that sort of thing. But yeah, tailor it for the country. Absolutely.
We found that there's a certain, like, no matter how good the service you give is, there's always a certain amount of like nervousness that's associated with a return. Like, there's a moment between the customers let go of the goods that they have to send them back to you, but they haven't got their money back. And there's absolutely no way of removing a certain amount of fear that they've got, no matter how many times it's happened, that they've lost the product and they're not getting their money back. And when we do the return ourselves and the collection, and when we use a third party, there's still a sort of like a base level of contact that comes in around just like, where's my money?
Yeah.
From a very, very early point. So you can definitely invest in making things better, but I don't think at the moment we are anywhere near close enough to having anything such as a perfect returns policy. There's going to be fear and worry that you're getting stung.
It seems to me about how you articulate the returns policy and how you communicate it to your customers and being upfront about it as your website is, and where Amazon maybe not quite as good as that, you know. And I suppose, you know, as a consumer, if you understand what you're in for, what the returns policy is, then frankly, you know, you're in a good shape, really.
Speaking of reputational damage of returns, it's just occurred to me, Ukes, which are a fashion retailer, part of the Net-a-Porter group. If you look at their reviews, they are being trashed for their returns policy, because essentially all people care about is where's their money. And the Ukes process, returns processing, takes forever. And so the thing at Lovehoney, why we have this kind of global system so anyone can process any returns, is to quickly get the money back to the consumer, because that's all they care about. So as long as you can say, this is happening now, you're in for a win.
And being proactive with the notifications,
Yeah.
right? Being proactive with the, right, we've got it. It's going to take a couple of days now before you're going to get your refund. You can expect it by, and just communicating that to the customer in the channel of their choice, and not making the customer go through all of the effort proactively to get information out of you. It's the retailer's responsibility.
I mean, ultimately for us at Enclothed, we're not taking the customer's money. They pay nothing up front. They get a free box delivered to their house and they try everything on. They only pay for the stuff they keep. So we don't get that sense of anxiety from a consumer. We probably have it more on our side. that they're not going to return everything. And no.
That must work really well in Germany.
Yeah.
That's essentially a German shopping model.
So yeah. So ultimately, and that's part of it. And it's because, you know, when we buy things, there is that emotional sentiment, and we want to touch and feel product. And bricks and mortars, you know, they constantly get lower rates of returns than online businesses, and it's because people have been able to try it on. So essentially, our returns policy is the changing room. It's walking to a changing room, it's trying something on, and then we're tracking what people are trying on, how many times they're trying it on, and making better decisions for our consumers based on that. And it works really well for us, and we get a really low rate of returns after customers have bought the product from what they've kept. It's because we need that feeling of, I like that, or but not that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a psychological element behind it for a consumer as well.
We did some work a couple of years ago with Doddle. You may have worked with Doddle, which was the Network Rail parcel collection point at railway stations, and they were looking at just that, creating changing rooms in the stores that people could try their products on, decide whether they fitted or whether they liked them, and then return them straight away, so they didn't have to take them home. Any thoughts on that? Building on what you said,
I mean, I think it's great. I think for us, again, it's a bit like Matt's here's built it into the model, which for us it was built into our model that we would have this try before you buy type service. For other retailers, it's really difficult. We have a lot of product out in circulation that technically no one's paid for. So, you know, we have a lot of product in the changing room that we have to know where it is at any given time. And again, operationally, we have to track that product. So we're not saying that we've sold out of product when we know it's going to come back because it's out with a customer. We're not buying more jeans because we think we're out of jeans, and actually it's out there with our consumers, and we know that there's a certain percentage of that that's going to come back. So logistically and operationally, it can be really, really difficult for businesses, and we haven't necessarily, you know, cracked it, but, you know, it's something that we constantly focus on and think about and cost it up and run it again. And
so when do you think it might be acceptable to charge for returns? So I'm thinking the example of the perpetual returner. Yeah, and you must have them, in all of your businesses. You can track the individual who is a perpetual returner. Does it ever become acceptable to charge for a return? Richard, do you know?
I think probably no at the moment. If everyone were to start doing it, then it would become fine. I think it's probably now, I guess much like delivery, that it's a tiered option, like Levi has, is probably what's the safest bet to go. As long as you've got some way of doing it that's free, then you can start charging for things that are a little bit better or a lot better or things like that. But I think anyone now who tried to say that everything's charged for, I think that would be enormous. That would stick out like a sore thumb, and I think that.
Any thoughts on that, Anthony? Obviously, from your experience.
Yeah, there's been a lot of opportunities that have been explored with some retailers that we work with. People are trying to offer voucher codes instead of refunds, or people, especially if you've got an account like on Lovehoney. Obviously, you can get the repeat custom versus just the cash outlay. I guess it's similar to Enclothed as well. So there's plenty of options there when it's acceptable. When you've won that customer's loyalty and trust, and if they trust you as a brand and they like you, particularly like Enclothed and Lovehoney and Ocado, then and you've won them over as a long-term customer, and you just explain, right, this is a table and chairs, it's cost us 10 quid or whatever it is to get it over to you. We're going to have to charge you for the refund. I think they'd accept that. So I think it's case by case.
Anybody else want to pick up on that?
Yeah, for us, I mean, if we have a serial returner, normally we then start a conversation with them, and then if they carry on, we have the technology where we can just block deliveries to their address, so we just don't accept their order anymore. I don't think personally we'll ever charge for returns. It's not our way of doing things. As I say, if someone's returning something, we have failed them. So why are you adding a further burden onto the customer? That's not going to get you a thumbs up review. So, make the customer happy.
Okay.
It depends massively on the reason as well. Taking the table and chair example, if it's being returned because you delivered it with an enormous scratch all across the top of it, then suck it up, it's your own fault. If it's being returned because decided the shade of blue wasn't quite the right one for the dining room, then actually, maybe that is something where it is more legitimate to say, actually, it's on your own back. It's your choice to send it back to us. So I think there's lots of nuance around there.
Okay.
And I think being transparent with your customers. So when we didn't always charge for a premium collection, and we started to. So we actually kind of didn't. We took it back from the consumer, and we did get a couple of emails asking us why, and but ultimately we're just really transparent. We say, look, we're a startup and it costs us X, and we're still putting that down to £4 or whatever, and we're trying to give as much back to you as possible, and ultimately we're sending you all the product. And sometimes if you're really transparent and genuinely just communicate that with the customer, actually there are, they do understand. We're all customers of other businesses, and they do understand. So
Absolutely. We've got about 6-7 minutes left. So any other questions from the audience so far? Okay. Could we have a conversation about the globalization of returns? So shipping from the UK, obviously to America or Australia or Europe or whatever, and then returning back. What kind of challenges have you faced with that situation?
Tax implications. I mean, for us, so our biggest territory is obviously the UK, the US, and EU, which is why we have warehouses there. We tend to always ship and return via the same courier. I mean, there's economies of scale, essentially. In Canada, we're not number one. We're a small business in Canada, and so we'll try to essentially piggyback off other businesses. And so I think the returns processing in Toronto is shared with lots of other businesses. Essentially, yeah, if it's a big enough country, we'll just ship from there and return from there. If it's a small territory, try and keep the costs low as much as possible, because they will kill your margin.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think Matt already alluded to it. If you're going into Germany first, then you're in for a bit of a surprise, because they want payment invoice, and they want to return 50% of the goods that they get. So it's very tricky. It's more of an enclosed type model, which if you're not expecting that as you go out into Europe, and again we're fine in Europe at the moment because it's an open market, right? Well, nobody took the bait there, but we'll see what happens with that as this whole Brexit thing evolves. And then again in the US, the tax implications, as Matt said, there's all these things to consider. And then to the gentleman's point previously, it's not just getting it back from wherever it is; it's then getting it back into a state where it's ready to be resold or put back on the shelf.
Trying to find warehouses that will accept used sex toys as returns for processing is quite hard to do.
Not easy. So look, we've got 5 minutes left. So maybe just to wrap the session up now, maybe just a quick summary from each of you, with the key points and your key observations on how you make the reverse logistics returns policy an absolute USP to your sales strategy.
Okay, I think it's all about a balance. I think you need to decide where you want to sort of like put your stake in the ground between it being the economically sensible decision or the best customer service experience. And I think going completely full edge on either spectrum is the wrong decision, and there's a spectrum that anyone can choose to be on. But I think it needs to be a conscious decision.
I'd say similarly, but always based on data and based on margin. Does the item have to be returned? If you're only making £3.50 on that item, you're not going to want to spend another £3.50 accepting a return on it. And actually, some of our best customer experiences in terms of reviews of people reviewing our service is where we've said, just keep it. You'll have a new one tomorrow. But that is all based on data. So that's all based on how much margin, how much does it cost, how frequently they purchase, all sorts of things, and literally make a decision algorithmically on a case-by-case basis.
Along the same lines, for us, it's about, we know as e-commerce businesses, especially in fashion, we're going to get returns, but what can we learn from them? How can we make them improve our future merchandising and buying decisions, and also, better customer, experience in the selling of the product? So for us, it's really, about the data and learning from returns, the power of the returns.
Yeah, it's not going away, so embrace it and use it as a differentiator for your brands where you can, and build every decision around the customer and factor in customer experience, loyalty, retention, and all of that stuff into your bottom line calculations, rather than purely just on the operational side. The customers buy experiences; they don't buy from on price or from brands. They buy experiences, and the returns experience is very much one that forms part of that end-to-end brand experience.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Just to finalise then, if I'll just open the audience, anybody want to add anything else from what they've heard? Any comments anybody's got that they just want to add to the debate? No? Okay, well, I think we'll wrap that up then. That's been absolutely fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.